morning. First of all, thank you to Wolfgang and the Institute for organizing such a very impressive and interesting conference. I want to start out. I've got one slide I want to show you, which I think, for those of you who have been following things in the Balkans over the past year and Kosovo's declaration of independence, the International Court of Justice in The Hague over the summer issued its opinion on whether Kosovo's declaration of independence was legal or not. And there's been a debate amongst Balkan watchers, but people who follow these issues in general, as to the legal justifications for the ICJ's decision. And, you know, critics would say it was somewhat arbitrary and confusing. But I think that sort of symbolizes the state of the debate regarding who has the right to self-determination and which claims get recognized or not. So to start off the topic on a somewhat light note, this is how somebody explained how the ICJ came up with its decision. Jessica, by the way, thank you for keeping that a secret. Now, on a more serious note, some 2.5 years ago when Kosovo declared its independence, Susan Woodward suggested that the mechanisms and methods by which the international community used to regulate Kosovo's path towards independence revealed that it had made little progress since the start of the Yugoslav crisis in dealing with the inherently conflicting claims between ethno-national groups claiming independence based on their right to self-determination and the rights of existing states to protect their territorial integrity. I would like to expand on Woodward's thesis by going a step further and suggest that the way in which the international community, in quotation marks, has handled the Kosovo Future status process suggests not only that it had learned little from the Yugoslav cases. In fact, the way in which Kosovo's future path towards self-declared independence has been handled is probably the most problematic of all. Prior to the outbreak of the Yugoslav conflict in the early 1900s, the international recognition of new authorities had been governed by the Montevideo Convention of 1933, according to which new states were recognized when there was evidence that a government controlled a clearly demarcated territory and a stable population. The outbreak of large-scale violence in the former Yugoslavia in 1991 led international policymakers to believe that a new, more interventionist approach was needed. This school of thought argued that stopping the violence in the former Yugoslavia could be achieved by recognizing the individual republics as independent states, and thus their claims to self-determination, thereby turning what had been an internal conflict into an international one, and giving each of the Yugoslav republics the right to call upon international institutions and other states to help defend their sovereignty. An alternative school of thought believed that what it considered premature recognition of the Yugoslav republics would exacerbate rather than dampen these conflicts. Indeed, the then president of Bosnia and Herzegovina himself, Ali Izetbegovic, urged Germany's leadership in December of 1991 not to recognize Croatia's declaration of independence, because to Izetbegovic, the consequences of such recognition for Bosnia were clear. Other international officials active in the Yugoslav negotiations at the time, such as Cyrus Vance and the UN Secretary General Perez de Cuellar, whom Uriel just mentioned, were making similar arguments. The debate over whether or not early recognition of the Yugoslav republics was appropriate either morally or strategically continues to be contested among specialists on the former Yugoslavia. Wolfgang remembers these debates very well. Ambassador Insko remembers these debates very well. James Gow is one of the leading experts on this field, on this topic, so he knows the debates that were going on at the time very well as well. Now, for our purposes here, we don't need to go into this debate, except that I would argue that early recognition did not have the effect that its proponents claimed it would have, i.e., it neither prevented nor stopped the conflicts in Croatia and Bosnia. In fact, in both of those conflicts continued for over 3 years after these states were granted international recognition. The problems and tragedies these countries experienced in that time are well known to everyone, from the killings at Srebrenica to the forced expulsions that affected all of these states. Moreover, it's worth remembering the contradictory approaches with which the European Union, or at the time the EC, and the US approached the recognitions of the former Yugoslav republics. In 1991, what was then still the European community had commissioned an eminent French jurist, Robert Badinter, to lead a commission that would determine which of the Yugoslav republics had fulfilled criteria for recognition. The EC, however, ignored the Badinter Commission's advice, recognizing republics which Badinter had advised against, while failing to recognize republics which Badinter had said had fulfilled the requirements. Fast forward to 2006 and 2007 and the Kosovo Future status process, and many of the problems in dealing with conflicting claims over self-determination and territorial integrity are still in evidence. In fact, almost 20 years after the disintegration of Yugoslavia began, Kosovo's declaration of independence has become the most contested of all the former Yugoslav republics. As of this week, about 2/3 of the international community has not recognized Kosovo's independence, including 5 of the 27 EU member states, all of the BRIC countries, i.e. Brazil, Russia, India, and China, the world's largest Islamic country, Indonesia. Of the 71 countries that have recognized Kosovo, 20 have a combined population less than that of New York City. Moreover, many of the arguments made by proponents of Kosovo independence have proven false as of now. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into that, but if we want to talk about this during the discussion we have. But most importantly, I think, as all of us should agree, the spillover effect of Kosovo was seen very clearly soon after the Kosovo's declaration of independence with the war in the Caucasus in August of 2008. So by way of conclusion, what do the international recognitions of the Yugoslav republics in the 1990s and the diplomatic debacle surrounding Kosovo's declaration of independence tell us about the way in which the international community, again in quotes, handles claims to self-determination and independence? First, evident in both the Kosovo and the Caucasus cases is a disturbing trend toward what I would call a sort of modified or complex form of unilateralism when it comes to claims towards independence. Many of the problems related to Kosovo recognition today can be found in Washington and Brussels' refusal to get Moscow and Beijing on side for their efforts. And Moscow's diplomatic fiasco vis-a-vis Abkhazia and South Ossetia is an even more extreme example of this problem. Second, from the beginning of the Yugoslav crisis until today, international policymakers have consistently made the mistake of believing that there would be no spillover effect from recognitions. And again, those of us who have been following this for a long time have seen this happen again and again. It was widely believed that recognition of Slovenia and Croatia would not affect Bosnia back in 1991, or that what happened in Bosnia would not affect Kosovo. And here I'm saying the way the Bosnian War was ended, the Dayton Peace Accords, that could sort of be held in a vacuum and that would not have an influence on the thinking of Kosovo politicians. A latter-day version of this suggested that Kosovo was a unique case, again in quotation marks, but apparently Vladimir Putin did not get the memo on this one. And the spillover effect from Kosovo extended to the Caucasus. And it's not alarmist to note that the precedent set by both Montenegro's and Kosovo's declaration of independence could one day have very serious implications for Bosnia and for Macedonia. Third, 20 years after the breakup of Yugoslavia began, it's clear that the rules of the game concerning which groups possess the right to self-determination and which do not remain unclear. Up until Kosovo's declaration of independence and its recognition by the US and most EU countries, the argument had been made that only the claims to international recognition by constituent republics of multinational federations, such as Bosnia or Georgia, should be accepted. Now, with Kosovo, South Ossetia, and Abkhazia, we have sub-republican entities vying for and obtaining recognition. In the Balkans, again, this is an extremely worrying development, especially bearing in mind the possibilities for further disintegration in Bosnia, Macedonia, or even Serbia itself. But would-be secessionists can go even further and ask, as they do, why do 2 million Albanians in Kosovo deserve independence and not 20 million Kurds in Turkey or in Iraq? So in sum, we still have a long way to go in terms of we still have a long way to go, as the Yugoslav and post-Yugoslav experience shows, in terms of establishing an international mechanism for recognizing claims to self-determination and independent statehood, which can be considered universally legitimate. The good news, however, is that this problem is going to keep Wolfgang and his institute busy for a long time to come. So thank you.
Thank you.